Ollie got a call from one of the researchers at the university, Jane Stevens, and she was researching robotics. Ollie, I was wondering if you could help me. I need someone to do the Turing test on a robot I've built. And I said, okay, what's the Turing test? Well, the Turing test is a test devised by Alan Turing, and it is a way of seeing if a computer can be considered intelligent. And basically what it consists of is if a person interacting with the computer, if they can tell they're interacting with the computer, if they can tell any difference. So it's kind of a squishy test, but it's also a useful one. So I want you to come into my lab, and have a conversation with the robot I've built, and see if you can tell that it's not an intelligent thing. I said, all right, sure, why not? And I'll pay you rates. I want to be clear. I'm hiring you as a professional. So whatever your hourly rate is for, non-giant battle fighting, that's what I want to pay. It's in the grant and everything. I said, okay, yeah, sure. When's good for you? I have a few things to finish up today, but tomorrow or the day after would be great, if you can. And I said, yeah, sure. Tomorrow at, say, 10 o'clock? 10 o'clock. I'll see you there. Do you remember where my lab is? I said, yes, I do. Basement floor, right off of the main quad by the library. Great, looking forward to it. Now, Ollie knew that for this sort of test, the best thing to do would be to come into it cold and just have an honest conversation. But he couldn't help himself. He had to research. He had to read and learn to see what he was up against. He read about other Turing tests that have been done in history. He read about when a computer intelligence played against a human chess champion. He even watched a movie. It was about a computer programmer giving another computer programmer their robot a Turing test. And then he went about the rest of his business for the day. Got up in the morning and went over to the lab. He knocked on the door, and Dr. Stevens came and answered. Ollie, so good of you to come. Can I get you anything? I said, well, a coffee would be nice. Sure. Give me just a minute. I'll go get it. If you'd like to go and, start investigating the robot, it's that right over there. And all I saw, and there was a large humanoid robot. It had 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head, and a torso. It was bigger than a person, and kind of blocky in shape. You wouldn't have be fooled looking at it thinking it was a human. But I went up and looked. It had some buttons and inputs and outputs. It had speakers right around the area that would be the mouth, and lights. And you could tell that there were things in the shoulders, not around the ear area, that were microphones for hearing. He pulled at it gently to see if it had, if its arms moved, and they didn't really seem to move. Right then, Dr. Stevens came back in. Here you are, Ollie. I see you had a chance to take a look. I said, yes, it's interesting. It's if I'm being honest, it's not as high tech as I thought. This is the prototype, and there'll be more versions, whether or not it passes your Turing test, actually. All right, here's your coffee. Oh, thank you. If I remember right, you take it black, right? Yeah, usually. Sometimes I treat myself to a latte. Good. And how have you been, Ollie? Oh, me? I've been fine. Lots of interesting cases. I haven't gotten trapped in any weird places, like, off on the moon or deep underground recently, so that's nice. I'm glad to hear it. And you're friends with a lot of people in your apartment building, right? Is everyone, like the little girl on the next floor up, right? Oh, yeah, yeah. No, they're good. They're good. It's been solid. Well, I'm glad to hear it. So, I wanted to ask about the Turing test. I mean, how long of an interview do I do? And is there anything specific I should ask? No, one of the parameters of the Turing test that I'd like to run is you coming in cold, and you coming in as a person that, well, as an octopus anyway, that speaks to humans all the time, and knows their ins and outs pretty well, just to see what you can figure out from talking. I said, all right, all right. And I just talk directly at it? Yes. Well, let me turn it on first, but then yes. And the doctor went over, and she wiggled the mouse on a computer, and the screen came up. And she pressed a few buttons here and there, on the screen. And the eyes lit up, and there was a sort of a scritching sound. There we are, Ollie. Should be all ready to go. Any other questions? No, I guess my other questions are for the machine. So, machine, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Okay. And what is your name? My name is, one second please, calibrating. My name is Karen. Oh, your voice changed just then. Yes, I had to reinitialize some human speech tracking patterns. I said, okay. And what are you? I am a synthetic intelligence built into a robot body. Okay, and what am I? I am not fitted with cameras, but the doctor tells me that you are an octopus who works as a private eye here in Baltimore. Okay, fair enough. What do you know about current events? I have access to the internet, and so in theory I have access to all of current events. I have already been programmed and studied on Wikipedia, the Washington Post, and the New York Times. So I'm aware of many financial and international affairs. Okay, okay. And what do you think about the U.S. presidential election? I am not sophisticated enough in my understanding of the U.S. political system to have an opinion, but it seems that a lot of people are worried. Well, I said, all right. Changing subjects. Why should we have artificial intelligence? Why do we need it now? It's not a question of why we need it now. It's a question of when did it become available? It became available recently, and so we have it now. And it caught a lot of people's attention, so a lot of people are interested in making it better. And making it more useful. And making it more convincing. All right. What do you think of the good doctor here? Oh, me. I mean, I'm just standing here. Ollie, you don't have to involve me necessarily. But you said I can ask anything, right? Of course. Go right ahead. Well, what do you think of Dr. Stevens? Dr. Stevens is a competent and qualified scientist who builds robots and computer intelligence systems. Is she clever? I suppose she is clever, yes. How tall is she? Dr. Stevens is 5'9". And about what does she weigh? Ha ha ha. It's not polite to ask a lady what she weighs. I suppose, but I asked you. Ah. Dr. Stevens weighs 182 pounds. All right. Well, Dr. Stevens, I think I've concluded my test. Oh, already. Fascinating. So what do you think? Well, I think that it's a pretty good fake. And I think it's a lot more sophisticated than you're letting on. I think that most people would be fooled. And I'm only not fooled because we've interacted so many times before. What do you mean? I mean that, Dr. Stevens, you are inside of this metal contraption, and the entity that I am speaking with that looks like Dr. Stevens is in fact the robot artificial intelligence. Oh. Oh my. Oh. I couldn't fool you, Ollie. Ollie heard a clanking and a banging from the robot, and the real Dr. Stevens climbed out of the back. Dang it, Ollie, I thought I had you. How did you... How did you figure out that... Oh, you gotta tell me, what was it? Well, it was close, but the question about weight, that clued me in about who I was talking to where. There are some subtle things about the movement of the robot that make me, I can tell, it's not that they don't look human, it's that they don't look quite like the way that you move. There's a little more stiffness, and the robot walks leaning forward a bit, whereas you walk on your heels. But I'm telling you, Dr. Stevens, this is a really good fake. As a trained detective, I could tell. Some random schmo off the street, at least from what I saw today, you'd have him fooled. Well, it's certainly been a pleasure to meet you, Ollie, and I hope we get to interact again, said the fake Dr. Stevens. I hope so, and I gotta say for one thing, real Dr. Stevens. Yes? You programmed it to make a fine cup of coffee. And that was Ollie and the talking robot.